Erev Tov, Chavrim, I'm Steve Ben-nun. You're watching Israeli News Live. And friends, we are in a very dire situation here in the United States tonight as I am getting reports in, very serious reports in fact, about the situation in Iran with the United States, the downing of the drone. And of course, I just had one friend contact me to let me know that President Trump had ordered a strike on Iran and then had canceled that strike on Iran. But you know, that's nothing compared to the situation that was shared with me just moments ago about the current situation in Washington, D.C. Tonight. There are a lot of heads going in all different types of directions on the situation in Iran. It's been confirmed to me that there are many in President Trump's advisory team there that are just gung-ho, ready for war pretty much. But there are some that also believe that cooler heads must prevail, and the only way to avert a war that could bring Russia right on top of our doorstep is direct negotiations between President Vladimir Putin and that of President Trump. It is a serious situation that we're in right now, friends, and I cannot tell you enough just how serious this is right now. You know, you guys know me well enough, the contacts that I have, different parts of the world. I have them in the Middle East. I have them here in the United States. I have several contacts in D.C., but I have contacts that are very much in the know of what's happening as this situation unfolds. And it's not something that many of President Trump's advisors are advising him on. And that is to try to reach out to President Putin individually and speak with him personally to try to diffuse the situation between the United States and Iran. I mean, let's face the facts. Everything that has been happening right now in the Middle East has been instigated as well. As American citizens, we don't need to be going and fighting wars in Iran just because of our allies saying that Iran is posing some kind of major threat. I do believe that there is a way of political negotiations to try to settle these differences that we have with Iran right now. And of course, knowing the information that I already know, how that there has been usage of foreign national forces to stage the attacks on the tankers, the Japanese tankers. There have also been ships, Iranian ships, that have been set ablaze. We have seen Israel also strike Iranian targets inside of Syria. Of course, Israel saying that their right to defend themselves is why they are doing it. At first, it had to be a 50-mile-kilometer buffer zone, then a 100-mile-kilometer buffer zone, and now it's anywhere inside of Syria. Iran is supposedly posing a threat to the state of Israel. All these things could be settled out as well, but right now we are in a situation to where if we strike Iran, especially with the overwhelming force that the United States may use to strike Iran with, this would cause a response from Russia. I can tell you now that President Putin has always wanted to have a relationship with President Trump and was very hopeful that that would be so. But that has been sidelined by many of President Trump's advisors. I'm not the greatest fan of President Trump. But then again, I also realize there's not a whole lot he can do when you have a deep state calling the shots and they're wanting wars on a continual basis in order to facilitate a war economy. But tonight, friends, let me just say to you, there may be some of you that are listening out there that have contacts with President Trump or with some of his inner circle that could reach out to him. I can tell you now, there are those that are saying that he really does need to have a sit-down personal meeting with President Putin before we end up in a situation that could also affect us here in the mainland United States. I know that one of my intel sources out of the Middle East was telling me that when Iran made this statement not too long ago, they had the capability of taking out an entire U.S. naval fleet with just one shot. The source that I had said he did not believe that Iran was bluffing, that they do have this type of technology. As I've shared with you before, I do know from information that's been shared with me already is that China and Iran have been sharing or working, they have been working on a technology that is beyond U.S. capabilities and something the United States has not been able to mitigate. So I'm asking you, if you know of any way to get a message to President Trump, and I know there's a lot of people that listen to this broadcast. I've been surprised myself at some of the people that listen to this broadcast. But if you have a way of getting out, maybe even tomorrow morning, as soon as it breaks day, send messages to your senators, your congressmen, asking them to take the time to ask President Trump to try to work this situation out before our two nations go head to head. Keep in mind as well, the United States is supposed to be a Christian nation. We're far from what a Christian nation should be. Russia also is supposed to be a Christian nation, but they too are far from what a Christian nation should be. But nonetheless, there are those entities out there, or governments, I should say. I'm not talking about aliens at this point. I'm just talking about government forces that would love nothing more than to see the two superpowers of the world to go at a war that could end up being a nuclear exchange to wipe out more Christians. There's already this plan to put in a Noahide law, 7 Noahide law on a global scale. Wait till you hear the message that we'll be putting together tomorrow with my wife. It is growing more rapid than you could ever possibly imagine. One thing that could stand in the way of implementing a new world order like that, of course, are two nations that do have Christians that stand for Jesus Christ still, to stand for the truth of the gospel. And unless the leaders of these two nations take time, I know Putin is willing to do this, but unless President Trump can stand up against those that are in his cabinet, such as John Bolton, that are pushing for war with Iran, and take the leadership as President of the United States and say, no, I'm calling Vladimir Putin, we've got to work this situation out and defuse this. Trump not long ago, he made the comment that he wanted to pull the troops out of Syria, but the deep state were causing problems. Now's the time, Mr. President, to show that you could be a true leader and make this phone call. For the sake of the American people, and for the sake of our men and women in uniform that are in harm's way in the Middle East, because someone gets a little excited or because some deep state operative wants to make billions off to blowing off a few weapons into Iran. I can tell you now, friends, it won't be just a few weapons. It'll be massive weapons if that's what happens. Pray is one thing I ask you as well. You ever pray for the safety of America? Not to mention, those of you that love Israel, Israel will be in the crosshairs too. But I know there's some in the elites of the government in Israel who's supposed to be, there's the claim that they're a light to the world. No, right now they're a sodomite nation that has no light whatsoever for the world. Only Jesus Christ is that light of the world. And he told his apostles, you are that light as well. We need to stand and shine as true believers tonight. Pray. I ask you tonight. I'm Stephen Ben-nun with Israeli News Live. A very serious time, friends. The message I got tonight is very serious. Good evening.